growing up, when I was given the times that I was allowed to watch TV, one
Hmm.
of my favorite things to do was I'd tune right in to PBS. If it was the weekends, it was cartoons. If it was the weekdays, it was PBS.
Hmm.
And I remember it doesn't even exist now. There was a show called Zoom that I used to like to watch. Um, I used to like to watch the Electric Company and so on and
Sesame
so.
Street,
Mm-hmm. That's well, everybody knows Sesame Street. If
Mr.
you don't know
Rogers.
Sesame, oh man. But what I'm getting to is even though I enjoyed it, there are things that I refer back to all the time that I learned specifically from PBS.
Mhm.
Whether it's some cultural thing that I know, whether it's something I know about another country or another people,
Yep,
uh,
yep.
there's certain things I learned about the law, about math, all types of things that to this day I refer to. Yet it seems as though its value has just totally shrunk, especially in the last decade. And obviously, I'm headed toward, they're trying to get rid of PBS and NPR. And Mike, I want to know what's your opinion about this? This is the Republicans doing this. This is the Republicans that want to get rid of NPR. So my question is, do you think it's right? Do you think there's an alternative option? And I'll just leave it like that, Mike. Where's your head about them getting rid of this?
Well, first off, I want to agree with you and say that I remember watching all of those shows, but certainly a lot of my knowledge base of travel, particularly like countries or places that, probably as Americans, we wouldn't normally go in Africa or South America, in the Amazon or wherever, came from watching some of those quote documentary shows on PBS. And to some extent, I've listened to a whole mess of things on NPR as well, on the radio. Same thing where you glean a bunch of, I'll call it, for the sake of right now for our discussion, I'll call it that those are non-biased programs, right? Like you're just learning about whether it's history or the area or the people that live in those places or whatnot. Now, having said that, and I'm probably going to take the less than popular approach here, which is usually my MO, I guess. But I'm sure I've got friends out there that are going to disagree with me on this. But I kind of think, forget about politics for a second. You're right. The Republicans basically want to get rid of public broadcasting because they claim that it is skewed and slanted with a bias towards the liberal side, and they think it's a propaganda machine. So it's not just NPR and PBS; it's also Voice of America and various other things that are basically funded or quasi-funded by the U.S. government. But forget about the politics for a second. Let's just hypothetically pretend that we don't even know whether or not it skews left or not. I kind of think, and this is probably where my unpopular opinion is going to come from. I kind of think the time for these networks has come to an end. And the reason that I think that is because, we're here sitting in 2025 now. People glean their information in many other ways. And particularly coming from, well, the two of us here. I mean, you used to get your information from a podcast for sure when we were growing up. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have independent journalism. That's the thing is, so today there's independent journalism and whatever that means. And that's a very loose and very sloppy statement. I get it. Because that ranges everything from these annoying TikTok people that are, I was watching yesterday. I'm getting off topic already here, but I was watching on TikTok yesterday. I'll scan while I'm going to bed, and I don't know if you've ever seen these. You get the guy, the rights activist guy that goes to police stations and the library and goes to the post office and films. And the police always come along. You can't film in here. This is federal building. It's a police station. Blah blah blah. And he's like, no, it's your Second Amendment. Blah blah blah. They're going on and on. But and he always claims, well, I'm an independent journalist. Well, what does that mean? I mean, all that means is that you're a guy with a camera and a microphone. However, there is a lot of good programming. There's a lot of good independent studios out there now. There's a lot of programming across the world in various mediums that I think have not just replaced public broadcasting, but I mean, let's be honest. I think the days of network television and all those, it's all coming to an end, right? We gather and we get our information and our entertainment in other ways nowadays. So I'm going to take the tack that I agree from a financial standpoint. I'm not sure why the U.S. government needs to fund media any longer. I mean, media has become, and you and I have talked about this on the podcast a zillion times. Media hasn't just become; it always has been, but it's always got a bias, one way or another. All media. So by definition, PBS, NPR, they have a bias, and it may vary depending on what show you're listening to, for sure, and whatnot. But I just think that I don't know why the government need. I mean, maybe here's my libertarian coming through. The government should not be in that business. There may have been a time and a place. It's similar to like. I would argue at one point in our history in the United States, unions were important, based on the structure, the way that enterprise business worked, the way that laws were written. But today, it's questionable whether the union's doing much more than sucking the people that are in the union dry of their money. So I know that's I just insulted everybody in the United States probably, but.
So let me ask you a straightforward question.
Yes.
Should PBS and NPR continue receiving federal funding?
I don't think so. And I don't think so because I think that our money, I don't think that's one of the government's, as much as I enjoyed it. And back in the day, if I wanted to know about giraffes living in the Serengeti, I got that information from PBS. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have any other option. I didn't have any other choices really to get that information. So the government at that time was providing, quote, a service to the citizens of the United States by educating us in that manner. But today, the government of the United States, by funding PBS, would be basically competing with other medias out there that are also teaching you about giraffes in the Serengeti, right? So at this point, I mean, why we've got better things to spend our money on. I mean, if I want to find out about giraffes in the Serengeti, I can go to countless other media sources to find that information out that are privately funded. So I guess that's my theory on this. Why do we need to spend tax dollars on that anymore? There's options out there.
Okay.
What do you think, Phil?
I don't agree with you.
Okay.
And here's why.
Okay.
Before I give that, let's bag up.
All right.
I think, and I've mentioned this several times before on different podcasts, before this is addressed, I think there needs to be legal address to the government's responsibility in education, period, before we even get into something like that. Is that in their purvey? And if it is not, then obviously this would get cut off. Mm-hmm. But we have, without law, decided that it's a moral obligation that the government provides a certain level of education to the United States people.
Yes. It's
Now,
public education up to the 12th grade.
depending upon the room I'm in, I may have agreed with everything that you just said. And but here's the thing. Just quickly, Mike, my daughter's 25. So when she was entering school, I had already gotten her a cellular phone. She had a cell phone. Back then, I remember when we would go places and people would see her with the phone, they were like, "Wow, this is a little over the top."
Right.
And
Right.
and as time has gone on, I've seen the evolution now where it's almost considered child abuse if you got your kid out in the street somewhere without a phone,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
So it would be very easy for me to get into a conversation and be absorbed in the thought that we're all moved over to a digital society. Television is obscure and kids aren't watching it. And yeah, that is for the demographic of people that you and I are around. But there's still millions of children who don't have a phone, won't be getting a phone until they get a job working at McDonald's and put away a few $100s to buy one. And they'll have to pay for their own cell service. Uh, so there are huge swaths of schools across the United States that still don't have a computer room, let alone computers in the room or
Mhm.
tablets or something like that. I was fortunate enough where my daughter went to a school where Bill Gates provided computers for the whole school.
Yeah.
So it feels like what you said is true. When I look at my world, it looks like it's true, but it's not true. And there's still a huge amount of people who every day turn on a television that do not have the ability to watch television shows, game shows, whatever it is they want to watch anywhere else than television. What I'm getting to is there are a lot of kids that basically, if they're in a social economical situation, that if we go with what you're saying, cutting off PBS and NPR, they have nothing. Zero. They don't have going on their phone. They don't have YouTube. They don't have any of these things. Additionally, it's been broken down. It's a fact. The numbers are it comes out to about $1.40 per American per year. $1.40 to fund these things. So we're not moving the needle, keeping it or not keeping it. It's literally a political football, and there are other things that we trick off money for in the government that are what 20, 30 times the amount of money is this.
Yeah. One
So
day is sending bombs to Israel.
exactly. Now, the other side of me is this, Mike. Even though I just said all of that, my thing is if they are going to continue funding PBS and NPR, then they need to de-escalate the evolution that I have seen over the past 20 years into what it has become. It used to be that when they involved themselves in moral and ethical things on the show, which they did, that was one of the groundbreaking things about
Mm-hmm.
like Sesame Street.
Yep.
But they stuck to basic, fundamental moral and ethical views that everyone across the board agreed on. Love thy brother, don't steal, don't judge a book by its cover, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the last 20 years, and especially the last 10 and woo, the last 5, there's been an escalation into getting into these little
Yeah.
personal decisions that people should be making with their mom and their dad. So, and then with the news, the NPR, it used to be almost like AP. They would just report the news. They may have one person who gave a quick little opinion,
Yep.
but the majority of it was just strictly news. So if they were to ever devolve back into just basic moral and ethics that we all agree on, stick to the education, and with the NPR, stick to news reporting, and that there was government control and regulation over that there, and there was a stipulation of that with the funding. I'm for them moving forward on it because there are a lot of people who are not as blessed as us that is their only option. So I want their option improved. I don't want it removed because there's nothing replacing it. There's not that they can go home and get on their computer. There's still a bunch of kids who, if there is a computer in their home, it's shared by everyone in the home. There's no I can get 2 or 3 hours straight and focus on learning something, or that don't exist for everybody. So I'm not with that. But if they're going to continue the funding, it must have regulations. They must get religion out of it. They must get these social issues out of both the NPR and PBS.
I mean, I tend to agree with some of what you just said, Phil. I mean, one of the challenges, and I agree that there's a scenario. Not to get completely off topic, as we always do on this show,
Right.
but I mean, where do we draw the line? And this is my frustration with the American education system in general, because you brought up education, and obviously there's a movement right now to get rid of the Department of Education as well. But and I agree with you that there are places in the United States, and certainly not everybody is of the same or has the same resources. I've had this argument. I think you and I had talked about this on the podcast, talking about the United States Postal Service, and my frustration has always been, well, can't we just get rid of the damn postal service? And then the argument always is the people that live way out, how are they going to get communication? They maybe don't have these services and blah, 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 blah. So my frustration is why can't we as a country spend the money on bringing society as a whole to a certain level? And let's just call it 2025 level for a second. And let's say that, can't we get everybody to a level where they have a cell phone, a personal device, or a computer that they can go on? They have internet access. Obviously, Elon Musk has launched Starlink for that very reason, because the argument was that people in the very remote parts of the country, they don't have access to the internet. Blah 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 blah. So it seems like the days of turning on your television with rabbit ears and sucking it out of the thing. I mean, that when are we going to move on? I guess the problem is that what I hear you say, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, we have to go to the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
Meaning that I hear what you're saying. The problem is, what my frustration is that it would be nice if we could get that lowest common denominator higher or at a different place. You know what I'm saying? So that way you don't know. Well, because that way we could all have the benefit of these let's call it a pool of resources. Because basically you're saying that John Smith in backwoods Montana, who relies on the U.S. Postal Service because FedEx doesn't dare go there, they don't have internet because there's no cable underground. They don't have they can't watch YouTube because they don't have internet, so they have to rely on rabbit ears and PBS. I mean, at what point, when do we cut that off?
I agree with the idea of what you said, but you're talking like a responsible parent to a child. At some point, you need to grow up and we need to level the playing field. I agree with that in the way you just presented it, but we're talking about government. If we do what you just said, then we shouldn't have a government. The only purpose of the government is to fill in the gaps. If it's not going to do its job, then I don't want to pay the taxes. I
Mm-hmm.
already complain about I don't get nothing from it already. So everything I'm talking about
Right.
really is about what other people get from
Right.
my money.
Which we can argue that you get third party because it creates a society that is more stable that you
So,
benefit from.
but I have to value that.
You do.
I don't. I tell my wife all the time, bro, I relish the idea of things collapsing and being dystopian. I'm more prepared for that.
Yeah.
So, and I know I'm unusual, and I'm actually not that unusual because I talk to
No.
people all the time that's
Yeah.
on the same page as me.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea that very unmasculine men feel very comfortable talking smack to me in my face because we live in this civilized society and they know I ain't gonna punch them in their face.
Right. Right.
I would like to get back to a time where you gotta be a man to get man privileges.
Right.
So I'm not the one, but I get your point. I'm that anomaly, Mike.
Yeah. No, I understand. Let's get back to
And that would really be a time where we would be living in a situation where everybody would be responsible for
Mhm.
themselves.
Oh,
As long as there is a government,
Yep.
it owes you something.
Yes.
Or why do you exist?
My microphone just did something weird. Do I still sound the same?
It did something weird, but you sound perfect now.
Okay. Um, let's get back to for a second to the PBS NPR thing and talk about the politics. I didn't even bring up politics when I was talking about it because the argument, though, is that it is become a platform, and I think you alluded to this, has become a platform for propaganda or to try to
Absolutely.
sway opinion.
No different than CBS.
But the difference is CBS is owned by shareholders and a private organization.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's no difference in what they're presenting to the public.
Yes, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I could join the Phil team here a little bit more if you told me that it serves a need for children growing up in places that are more disadvantaged or don't have the connections or whatever, and they didn't have a news hour, and they didn't have yeah, I mean, not that I'm watching.
They can have a news hour, but don't give your damn opinion.
Phil, I remember when PBS had the news where the guy got on in front of this. It looked like a desk was set up with a couple cinder blocks and a board on the top of it, right? And he had a hokey little microphone, and he's like, "Today, 12 people died in London in a fiery train crash," and then he moved on to the next story, right? But the problem is that we have become. Here's the issue: PBS is competing with YouTube. They're competing with CBS. They're competing with Fox News. They're competing with all these things so now the guy's sitting at a fancy desk. He's got graphics behind him. He's got green screens. And then they have inevitably, John, what do you think of this situation? I mean, and that's the part where it's not news anymore. What do you think? Which, by the way, just described CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, right? I mean, that's all they talk about is what do they think.
So, Mike, I want to run something past you. This is something I've been putting together for a while, and you just opened the door for this.
Oh,
okay?
Shit. Okay.
I'm just going to read. Here we go.
Okay.
It's called "Where Have All the Skeptics Gone? Media Conformity and the Death of Dissent." We're told Walter Cronkite. This is me. I wrote this. We're told Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, a titan of journalism. But I want to challenge that legacy because maybe Cronkite wasn't the gold standard. Maybe he was the prototype, the first in a long line of newsmen trained to deliver whatever the powers that be loaded onto the teleprompter, calm and authoritative and unquestioning. Fast forward to today, and it's hard not to see the ripple effect. Political opinion pieces sound nearly identical, whether they're on the left or the right. The same phrases, the same framing, the same pre approved outrage. It's as if dissent, skepticism, and critical thinking have been slowly pushed out of the mainstream. What used to be part of healthy discourse is now treated like a liability. And yet, people are clearly hungry for something different. So, the point of and I haven't finished that. That was just a little blurb that I started with. But what I'm trying to get to in this article, and like I said, I haven't finished it, is that ever since like the 70s, and I've created a little time thing that I haven't finished yet either, where you'll see since like the 60s and 70s, our whole lives, we have been seeing everything that's on a screen is entertainment. There has been no really like publicly funded uh neutral anything on a screen since the 70s, period.
Yep.
And PBS could not exist without giving an opinion. The only way that they can survive and get funded, in my opinion, is they have to be separate, excuse me, from the entertainment business
Yes.
and remain funded, but they have to have some rules and regulations.
Yep. And that's difficult. I mean, you used Walter Cronkite, which I remember because we're old enough, but let me use Dan Rather because he was kind of Walter Cronkite's replacement.
Absolutely.
To talk about what you just said about Walter Cronkite is very true. Look at Dan Rather today. Okay. Dan Rather's still alive. Dan Rather's still in media. Dan Rather's still doing interviews. And if you listen to him, he's very opinionated. And we were brought up when he was on the news as he was he took over the reins from Walter Cronkite and he was the news guy that was unbiased. Well, shit, you could see that that's not the case. I mean,
Not
just
at
look
all.
at him today, right? So that kind of outlines maybe for you guys that are a little younger than us. You remember Dan Rather? I guess.
Well, it used to be.
I don't even know who's on the news now.
It used to be whatever they read on that teleprompter, you had no recourse. You had no place
gospel.
Yeah,
that's right. So now here's the ironic thing. We've all changed our culture, right? Because Phil, when I listen to the news, regardless of what channel or what network or what media it's on, the first thing I do is go Google it. Right? I mean, if I see something on TikTok, oh, so-and-so died, first thing I do, Google it. Because you don't know. It could be AI, it could be a hoax, could be whatever, half the time it is. But it's no different than watching Fox News. I mean, they'll say something and you'll be like, or run you some stat that in the old days we treat as gospel. And you hear this stat, 89% of the people said this, and you go, wait a minute. And then you look it up. Yeah, okay, not really. 89% of the people that were in that room on the third floor of the Fox building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
my kids do not understand how powerful the information is that they have and how lucky they are to have access to the amount of information they had. Because I remember back in the day, Mike, I was a little nerdy. So I didn't always just leave it to whatever the person said. But in order for me to research them, I had to know the Dewey Decimal System. Right. I had to know how to use microfiche and look up
God.
Bruh.
I remember that.
And here's the thing.
You could spend hours to get to like 3 sentences.
Right. And here's the killer, Mike. You could spend all day in that library, and then you're like, oh no, you have to go to a college library. You
Yep.
go to the college library and they're like, "Oh no, you have to go to the master's program library." So
Right.
it would be like literally these books weren't readily available even
Yeah.
everywhere. You couldn't even order them everywhere.
That's true.
There were books that were literally like only at college libraries.
Yep.
There was 20 copies.
And thus Amazon was born.
There's people on here going, the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah. What the shit is that?
That was Google. That was, you know how when you first Google, you learn how to ask the kind of
Yep.
question to get the right answer. Even with AI, it's like that. Well,
Yep.
back in our day, you had to know the Dewey Decimal System to
That's
get
right.
your answers
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and be friends with a librarian.
That's right. Because inevitably the book that you're looking for was sitting on the damn cart in the library because somebody had brought it and hadn't put it back on the shelf yet.
Right.
Yep.
And if you were cool, Phil, this just came in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll check it in and then you could check it right out.
Right. I couldn't think of the words.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So, Mike, so you kind of answered it, but I want to be clear. Is public media essential for democracy and civil education?
I'm going to agree with you. What I liked, my favorite sentence that you said was that it's there to fill the gaps in what is not being able to, and it's different for everybody, what information they're not able to obtain. So you and I might have infinite resources to obtain information where somebody else does not. So it fills the gaps to bridge the gap between my source of information and the guy I just described in backwoods Montana that doesn't have all the resources that I may or may not have. So I can see there's a source, but okay.
But your rebuttal, Mike, I agreed with. I do believe that we need to make whatever the lowest standard be higher. I agree with that. Why can't we have the ability to get this information to people digitally all over the United States? And
we actually do, but we're not doing it.
But here's the killer, Mike. If you really analyze some of the biggest problems that we have in America, the solution will actually solve other problems.
Yes.
Like our roads and our education. If we focused on what we needed to do for those things, that would be a lot of jobs.
Yes.
That would be people being able to buy phones and pay for higher education.
Yep.
It's like a circle, and when you take a piece out of the chain, it just ruins it.
Well, look, knowledge. We've said this before. Knowledge is power, right? So if you take away knowledge, what it creates is people that are ignorant. That this is where discrimination and racism and I hate, I don't like the Mexicans, I don't like this or whatever. That's where that comes from. It comes from ignorance, right? If they're not well educated, if they didn't get to watch PBS and see, oh shit, look at all that cool stuff that's going on in Africa. If they didn't see any of that, they're going to be like, oh God, that dirty, nasty place.